Hello guys, welcome back to my show Get Real with Jasmin. So if you're watching the video podcast right now, you can probably see the background is different today. That's because I have moved to a new apartment, which means that my season of isolation has officially ended after a year. So I'm not sure if you guys can see it from the camera, but I'm living on a very high floor right now. And I swear to God, guys, I'm spending so much time stuck in the elevator with strangers every single day, which is very fun. But I'm not here to just talk about elevator today. Today, I actually want to talk about how spending a whole year in isolation has completely changed me because I know how torturing this period can feel like. But I also know if you do it right, if you go through this period in the right way, it could completely change your life. I've been through 4 stages in this entire isolation period, which are distraction, complete isolation, self sufficiency, and finally ending isolation. I think people ended up isolated for multiple reasons. Maybe you just moved to a new country or a new city, or maybe you just decide that you don't want to hang out with people that you don't relate to anymore, or people just leave you. Well, in my case, I moved to a new country and then I rented my own apartment. I live in the middle of nowhere and I have no friends. So it wasn't like, oh, I live alone, but I can hang out with my friends on weekends. No, it was isolation to the extreme. When I first rented that apartment, I was really excited because that was the first time I finally have the whole space to myself and I can finally have everything on my own terms. But apparently, things did not go as expected. So today I want to break down all these stages I have been through, and I think it could really help you if you're going through your isolation period right now. So here goes stage 1, distraction. I remember the first 3 days I moved to that apartment, I was very uncomfortable because it was so quiet. And it just feels really, really weird that nobody is around you anymore. So the first thing that I did, which is crazy for me to think about it right now, is I invited people that I barely knew at that time to my apartment. And I knew I didn't want to do it because home is just such a personal space for you. I did not want them to come, but I just could not stand with that silence, to be honest. And well, of course, it ended terribly. There are people jumping on my bed, and oh my God, it was just really terrible experience. And that was such a wake up call for me to look myself into the mirror and admit the fact that I cannot tolerate of being alone. And I decided that I'm not going to do that again because hanging out with people just to escape loneliness is a complete disrespect to yourself. Think about this. You are wasting your time, your energy, you're letting people crossing your boundaries just because you don't know how to be alone. And so that leads me to stage 2, which is a complete and painful isolation. So at this stage, I cut contact with everybody. I decided that I am going to be alone. I do not care how hard it is. I am going to do this. It was really painful and brutal, to be honest, but this is where true changes happen. Because when you are in isolation, your whole focus go back to yourself. And because there's no more people, no more noises around you anymore, naturally the noise in yourself, inside your head, started to get really, really loud, and there's no way for you to escape it. And this is where I started to see the whole purpose of this isolation period. It is really for me to completely focus on myself and dig deeper into myself. I could not have possibly done it if there are people walking around me to distract me all the time. And I'm telling you, once you start exploring yourself, you will be surprised of how little you actually know about yourself. I realized I didn't even know what I like because I never really have hobbies growing up. I was a standard Asian kid who were always studying. Or I started to see my patterns in life, why I am always struggling to rest and how that connected to my childhood trauma. This is a very difficult phase and a lot of people quit at this point because it's just easier to go back to your old life, having your old patterns with your old friends, even though it's not ideal, but it's comfortable. Most people do not want to sit with their uncomfortable thoughts or feelings, and instead of trying to understand it, they block it with noise and with distractions. So you really got to remind yourself, why on earth did you choose to live in this isolation? What was the life that you're trying to leave behind, and what is the dream life that you want to build for yourself? I, during this period, have a lot of moments that I want to just drop everything and go back to my home. And I had to remind myself, there's no future for me back there. I'm not going back to working for a minimum wage job or living with my parents. My future is not in the back, is ahead. And I guarantee you, once you push through this period, your life will look completely different, because nobody will ever have any power over you anymore, because you have become your own best friend. So then I went to stage 3, which is a state of complete self-sufficiency. And this is a very interesting stage to be at, because I was having so much fun alone, and I celebrated my birthday alone for the very first time. And I remember there was a point that I realized, shit, I have actually reached to a point that I'm self-sufficient. And it wasn't just like I don't need anybody. It's more like I don't want anybody anymore. I don't feel the need to make friends, which is ironic because this is where I start making new friends. And I think this transition is a little bit scary, because you have spent your whole life longing for human connection, but then you realize I have actually built my dream life on my own. So I think sometimes we need to be forced into some unwanted situation in order to see how capable we are, because we tend to underestimate ourselves. But then sadly, this is also a period where my lease is about to end, and I had to make a decision of whether I want to keep staying in isolation or to stay with my friends. And that leads me to stage 4, which is ending my isolation period. I make this decision because I realized how comfortable I was staying in my own cocoon, and it started to feel like I am hiding in my own cocoon. I've become really socially awkward and uncomfortable with people again. And that's when I realized I have learned my lessons in this isolation, but it's time to move on. And I also think we as human beings, no matter how independent we are, there is always a need for a human connection rooted inside of us, because that's just who we are. We are tribal beings, and the idea of self-sufficiency is not healthy. We, at the end of the day, need each other. So yeah, my living alone period has officially ended, and maybe in 3 months I will start bitching about living with people. But right now this choice feels really aligned, and I'm really happy with my choice. But lastly, I want to say that I, in this isolation period, have asked God multiple times, why on earth did you isolate me? Why did you remove everyone from my life? But looking back this whole year, I was just extremely grateful to be able to live in this period, because I needed to learn how to stand on my own feet, or I would get lost again and again in another friendship or relationship. So yeah, I hope this episode make you feel less alone on your journey. Some people have gone through this isolation period, and some people are currently going through it right now. And I guarantee you, take my word, if you get through this period, you will find a new level of strength within you. You will finally see how capable you are. So yeah, thank you guys for listening to this episode as usual, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye now.